Hello, everybody, and welcome back to your Energy Booster podcast or show. But yeah, this is once again Jeanith Padilla, your show host to your Energy Booster Academy. And today we have a very special guest. But before that, to those who were watching 2 weeks ago to the previous content, thank you so much for being there and for supporting us and for watching it on replay if you were not able to make it live. So last week we talked about how to protect your dreams with Miss Janice Lambert all the way from New York. And if you have not watched that episode or content, feel free to look it up here on Facebook or to my YouTube channel. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel using this QR code in front of you. You can just snap a photo and it will go to my YouTube channel. So every time I have a new content, you can be able to access it. But yeah, so glad I'm so glad to have you here today. And yes, I'm seeing a comment here, but it's not telling me the name. But yeah, I think this is to my page, from my page at Your Energy Booster page in Facebook. But whoever you are, good afternoon. Yes. Yeah, I think it's good afternoon here in the US. Good morning in the Philippines, and our very special guest today is coming from Queensland, Australia. Yeah, you heard me right. We're going overseas, and yeah, it's good morning in Australia too, and for sure, her audiences are also watching her, um, sharing her story to us today. So, if you have any questions, don't forget to type in the comments so we can address that. I would love for you to engage. And if you're watching this on replay, type in replay on the comment section. And of course, feel free to share these content to your families and friends. I'm sure today's content is very important or very vital for everyone's awareness, especially those who are married or those who are struggling with their relationships. I know relationships is not easy. I've been married for 14 years, and I tell you, if I didn't tell God that, yeah, Lord, I surrender, I can't do this by myself, I can't make this marriage work by myself. So may your will be done. Then when I did that, I didn't think that, I mean, like, that is just when the magic really happened, when I surrendered. But then, as I've said, if there's like abuse already happening, I really don't like that anymore. Like, physical abuse, emotional abuse, bullying, getting into a narcissistic partner. Yeah, no, we couldn't let it happen. And good news. That's the special treat that we are going to talk about this afternoon. So, without further ado, give me a sec. Can you tell me if you can hear me right? Let me have an audio check. Okay? Because maybe, yeah, let me have a tech check before we proceed. Okay. Tech check. We're good. Okay, so let me introduce our special guest today. Yeah, you guys, I'm so excited to have her in your Energy Booster Academy this afternoon. And yeah, as I've said, her name is Miss Robyn Anne Kent, and she has had a diverse and interesting professional life. I think she's very talented. She's multi-talented. She is a health professional and educator, a published author, public speaker, coach, consultant, trainer, musician, small business owner, instrumental music teacher, and a domestic abuse advocate. You see, she's very talented. So you should be excited to hear from her, right? She initially trained as a hospital-based nurse and had various roles in health sector and education before home educating or schooling her children and transitioning into being a business owner and instrumental music teacher. She was awarded the prize for nursing excellence from James Cook University in 1993. She received a diploma in education in 2020 from the University of New England and is close to completing a bachelor's degree majoring in linguistics and psychology, also from the University of New England. She has developed a structured multi-sensory literacy program as well as an online music academy. She has served on various committees and is the president of her local music teachers association. Robyn is excited to announce, oh, she is very excited to announce, of course, her latest endeavor as she transitioned into this new season of her life. She is the CEO and owner of Courageous Leaders Institute, and she became a Ziegler certified coach in 2023 and also joined the Maxwell certified team in July 2023 or the same year. Robyn is serving individual and group clients both locally and virtually across the globe in the areas of personal growth and leadership through speaking, coaching, consultancy, and training. She has a heart to serve both women survivors and those at risk of bullying and intimate partner abuse. Personally, she can testify to the transformation that personal growth brings in healing from the trauma and the complex PTSD in her own life. God has now given her a voice to share her story, a story of faith, courage, and hope where there was no hope. Robyn has a faith based signature coaching program specifically designed to assist those recovering from intimate partner abuse and trauma and complex PTSD so often associated with it. It is her prayer that young women will be strengthened to avoid damaging relationships and survivors will thrive as the ashes of their lives are transformed into a beautiful masterpiece. Later this year, Robyn will be launching her podcast and his plans to begin writing her first book, among other things. It is her deepest desire that many lives will be changed through the offerings of the Courageous Leadership Institute. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my dear friend, the CEO of the Courageous Leaders Institute, Robyn Anne Kent. Hi, Robyn!
Hi, Janet. How are you?
I'm doing amazing. I'm so excited for this show.
Oh, I'm very excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me to come.
Of course, my pleasure. So, yeah, tell us more about you and your story, Robyn. And hi, Anna. Thanks for, yeah, tuning with us today. Thanks for watching this live.
Hello. Thank you, everyone, for joining along live. And it's just my prayer that this is really of great value to you. And I just thank Jeanith for the honour and privilege of being here and being able to share my story. And I just thank you so much for that. So if you saw me 12 months ago, my life actually would be quite different from what it is now. And it's only through being able to grow, having the opportunity to have personal growth, that my life has actually changed. And for a long time, I was in an abusive situations for nearly probably 30 years, and I had complex PTSD. And a lot of people might not be familiar with that. And complex PTSD is what we often see in marriage situations where there's been trauma upon trauma upon trauma, and it just accumulates over time. Whereas PTSD can be a once-off event, like a car accident or witnessing some tragedy. Whereas the complex one is something that is a continual thing, and it actually is a trauma to the brain, and it actually affects several areas of the brain, which is why we see the symptoms that we have with complex PTSD.
Wow. Wow. So, can you share a little bit about this experience? Like, what happened? How did it happen? Were you aware before you got married that we will get into this kind of relationship? Something like that.
Yeah. Growing up, it wasn't until I actually started doing the inner healing of my, working through my situation, that I was actually able to then go back and look at how I got into that situation. So that took, the Lord just had to peel back everything, take away everything, to really just peel back all of those layers so I can actually go, okay, why did I actually get into these abusive situations? And for me personally, it goes back to my childhood. I grew up in a loving family, but when I went to school, I was at a primary school with 1,200 students, and it was run by two gangs, and I didn't fit into either of them, so I was bullied on both sides. Then when I went to high school, it was like 1,800 students.
Wow.
And I was bullied there too. I was the shortest at school. I put all my energies into my schoolwork, and I enjoyed learning. So I was bullied about that as well. I was bullied because of the way that I looked, because I wasn't tall and thin like the supermodels that were, prevalent in my time. And I ended up with eating disorders. And so I had all of this negative input into my life, and I never felt that I was good enough, and I just desperately wanted to fit in. I wanted to belong. I wanted to feel like I was loved. And so I went into nursing, and I loved nursing, and I was really good at what I did, and that was formed part of my identity then. And then I met my first husband, and I was not a Christian. And he was much older than me, and I never knew about red flags. There was nothing ever talked about this, 30 years ago. It was not talked about. And looking back, I can see that, yes, there were red flags. He didn't treat me very well at all. But I would tell myself I would be better after we were married. His family was totally narcissistic, and they would abuse me as well. They'd ring me up. They would stamp on my doorstep and yell abuse at me. So I had it from inside the home as well as outside the home. I had a lot of medical issues from the stress that went with that. After it was I left 3 times before I could finally get away from that situation, and I had 2 young children. And then I was out of that situation, and then I became Christian when I was 50. And so the Lord changed my life there. And then I actually met the person who would become my second husband, and he professed to be a Christian as well. And then from there, we got married and we had another daughter. But 2 years in, there was all of the abuse that was happening. His facade he couldn't keep up the facade any longer. And so that just became evident throughout the marriage. And we were in fundamental churches. We were part of IBLP, the Institute in Basic Life Principles. And the church situation enabled abuse to continue. I was told at one stage that, that I had to stay in the marriage, that it was you're married for better or for worse, so you need to stay. So there was all of those things going on, and the Lord, in His mercy, I was with Him for about 14 years, and the Lord, in His mercy, provided a way that He was removed from our home, but we were left with complex PTSD and all the symptoms that go with that. Could not make decisions, could not think about getting food on the table, could not just function, basically. And that's really hard when you have children, and people who are in that situation, unless they have someone to come along beside them and actually take care of them. It's really hard to move forward, and it's really hard to heal.
I know. Wow. What was your defining moment that enough is enough?
For him to leave, I didn't have
Yeah.
that. I didn't have a defining moment at all. It was, I had given up about 3 years previous to that and just said, Lord, there's nothing I can do. I can't get out of this situation. So it was all up to the Lord to actually get him out of our situation, because there was nothing I could do.
Wow. So you prayed for it. And then he left and never came back.
Yeah, he wasn't allowed to come back. Yeah.
Yeah. So on the process, like, because, yeah, you're already, that situation was done. The trauma has ended. And then now you have to deal with the post trauma. So how was it? Yeah. How did you deal with life after the trauma?
It was, so that went on for about 10 years. So dealing with that, and I didn't know if I would ever heal from that. I prayed that the Lord would heal my broken heart. I pray that because I felt my heart was just like if you can imagine a glass ball, and it had been shattered into tiny little smithereens. It affected every area of my life, because, in abusive situations, it's not just physical usually, it's the emotional, it's the mental, it's like, the psychological, the emotional, the financial, and in a Christian situation, it's usually spiritual as well. So it was all of those things, and also being in a Christian situation, it's usually the woman who is blamed for the whole situation. That she was never enough for her husband, that she didn't do the right thing, she didn't please him. So there's all of that kind of baggage that you have to kind of deal with as well. And there were a lot of friends who distanced themselves from us because, he would cry and he would make out that he was so hard done by. And that's just what they do, and so a lot of people believed him.
A lot of
And
people believed him
yeah,
and did not believe you.
yeah,
Okay, if you will, I mean, because sometimes, it's so hard to identify the abuse, because sometimes we could be confused, like, am I overacting, or it's just not right anymore? I mean, what is being done to us or to the victim? Can you cite an example? So, for us just to have a clarity on the examples of the abuse, like emotional abuse, yeah, stuff like that.
um, is it cruel? Is what he says to you, is it actually cruelty? And seeing that you are distressed, does he want to talk about that, or does he want to just brush it aside and just pretend that nothing happens? um, there's just so many examples. I just can't. I'm just not sure what would be a good one to share with you. Um,
Can you share some of your stories about that? Like, what was done to you, if it's okay.
Uh, yeah, there's just some quite an obvious thing is also whether or not whether he isolates you from your friends and whether he isolates you from your family, whether he
Oh,
controls your finances and doesn't let you have an idea of what's actually happening, whether he um, prevents you from going out, whether he tells you what to wear. There was times where like I had a favorite, an example early on was that I had this favorite dress, and he would say that I couldn't wear it anymore because he said other people would look at me as well, even though that was my favorite dress and I felt nice wearing that. That's a very light example, I guess. Um,
yeah.
anger, evil. Um, there's just so many things.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, I'm gonna add on it because sometimes they will say that I just care for you. That's why I don't want you to go out and meet your friends. I care for you. That's why I don't want you to wear this or that. Right? They can conceal it like that, and that sounds true or real from our perspective. Like, okay, he loves me so much that he doesn't want me to do this and that. Or sometimes financially it could be like, um yeah, I mean, you wanted to buy something, for you or for your family, or something that you need, and then they wouldn't let you. Sometimes we conceal that and misunderstood that it's okay. So
yes,
it's not okay, right?
and being in a very strict church environment, that's what they actually say is what should happen. And
Because
so
you
there's a
have
lot
to
of
submit
time.
to your
Yeah,
husband.
that's
Wife,
right.
submit to your husband.
Yes,
But they're using it. I mean, I don't think that's the real definition of it, or what really God is wanting. I mean, right, right. Okay, I got it. Like, wow. Okay, go ahead.
you're right. They use that. They say yes, you need to submit to your husband, and so you have this thing where you're just completely pushed down, pushed down, pushed down. That you become like a slave. You become like the servant. You might prepare a meal and it's never good enough, even though it's his favorite. Um, and it's you are so pushed down, feel like there is no hope. But then there's also early on, you don't actually realize that it's abuse either. You think this is normal. This is how a Christian
Yeah.
family is supposed to be. And so you
Did
don't
you come to
actually,
that point that I think this is okay? Did you come to that point that you are accepting the abuse as the right thing? I mean, like, you were confused if it was right or not anymore? Did you come to that point?
in the difference between a non-Christian marriage and a Christian marriage, it's, like the non-Christian marriage, I was fighting for myself and my children.
Mm.
And I had that strength that I just kept fighting to get out. And even though I went back those several times, because he said he'd changed, I was
Mm.
still felt like I knew what was right and what was wrong. But then the difference in a Christian marriage is you're told to submit, you're told to do what your husband says to you. And so you then start to question everything. You think that this must be pleasing to God, that
Mm.
this is how he does want me to live. And it totally reframes everything in your mind. And then you're starting to question. And then things that he might say to you, it then gets twisted and you believe that you've done the wrong thing. And it all comes
Mm.
back to you. And it's just totally changing your viewpoint on everything. And you don't know what is right or wrong anymore. You just assume that
Yeah.
this is how it is.
Yeah, and it would cause a lot of stress. And I think if you come to that point, you would be insane. Like,
That's part of
right?
the psychological warfare. Yes, they are
Yeah.
just twisting, twisting things that you say, twisting the memory that you have, and I was very thankful that I had older children, who would say to me, Mum, you are correct. You do remember it correctly, and they were, that just saved my sanity, really, because,
Yeah.
you just think you're actually going crazy. But that's just part of the mind games that they use against you.
Do you think the abusers are aware of what they're doing?
A lot of the times they are.
They do, they don't.
They do.
They do.
They do.
They
They
do.
do it on purpose. Yes.
They do it on purpose.
Yes.
It's so heartbreaking because marriage is supposed to be, you know, is supposed to be a blessing, a gift. And then, yeah, it's just so heartbreaking. But okay, thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing, all these examples because sometimes we could not recognize them, or sometimes we could be confused of what is right and what is wrong, and then we couldn't stand for ourselves. And then yeah, so I know a lot of women, um there is no one who's not exempted from this unless you get into a relationship, and each one of you is really matured enough, and you know what you're doing. But sometimes you get into a relationship, like, if example, like, you get into marriage or a relationship, or you get married really young, and both of you don't really know how to deal with each other and how to treat each other right, and both of you are facing problems and how to put food on the table, and there's just a lot of pressures from here and there, which would lead to fights and abuse and all that stuff. But then that's why it's important to go through counseling, right? That's why there is, counseling is being offered here and there. And yeah, I mean, I'm just so happy that you were able to overcome it. And yeah, look at you now. You have the voice, and you are becoming a leader to those women who went through to that, men and women actually, right? Um so tell us how to embrace this post traumatic or the CPTSD, and and
Mhm.
grow and be born again, and because um I was just recording my podcast earlier for the next 2 weeks, and it's all about John 3 1 to 21. It's about growth, transformation. It says there, and which is very awakening for me, because it says there, if you will not be born again, then you shall not see the kingdom of God. That is written in John 3 3. And so, what is meant there is not really, being born again in the spirit, but if we will use our language at this moment, at this present time, it's all about growth. When you grow from this kind of person to that kind of person, just how God designed you to be, or how God wanted you to become the best version of yourself, that is rebirth, or being reborn. And yeah, because mentioned earlier that you have not seen the situation before. And when you finally go through growth and healing, then you were able to see what you went through. And that's what you are being called right now, to help other women, men and women who went through that kind of situation before. So, yeah, tell us all about that.
So I just like to say that when you first um, say, like for me, that was over 10 years ago now, so 10 years and 6 months roundabout, when my husband was removed from our situation. And when you're first like that, counselling can be really helpful. Because you've got open wounds and you need to be able to have a way of being able to process it. It is very difficult to actually find trained counsellors who are actually qualified to deal with this kind of thing. I found that really difficult, really challenging to find someone who actually was able to walk through that with me. I knew I was where I was at and I knew where I wanted to go. I could not explain this whole thing. There were no answers for it. So when you're in that first situation, you need to be able to process it somehow. And so if you can find a counsellor to be able to help you with that, that's a really good starting point. If we can remember also that complex PTSD is actually a trauma, it's not a mental illness. It's actually trauma to the brain, and it affects several areas of the brain, and it affects the amygdala, it affects the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex. So the amygdala and the hippocampus have a lot to do with our memory and how we process our memory and process emotions. And so when those two areas are damaged, then that makes it really hard to work through this process. And then the prefrontal cortex is to do with our executive function, processing, also a little bit processing emotion, but also our fear, making decisions, and being able to do things in a regular fashion. So when all of those things are damaged, we see the symptoms that we have. We have inability to make decisions. We have that hypervigilance all the time. We have that, that hopelessness, the suicidal thoughts. We have difficulties with relationships, the sleeping difficulties, all of those things that are stacked up on top of each other. And that's initial things that we have to try and deal with to sort of then, once those wounds are started to heal, then we can have a scar that we can then move into coaching. And so when we move into coaching, then we can actually start that personal growth, that we can actually move forward. So for me, it was only in this last 12 months that I was able to get into that coaching situation. I didn't have the finances to be able to do it previous to that. And, about 18 months ago, I had burnout in my job. I wasn't able to continue working. I was on some government benefits, and I still had complex PTSD at this stage. And so some things that will happen and won't affect a person who does not have that, but someone who does have that, any little things is like another trauma, another opening of the wound again. And that happened in my situation and spiraled into this suicidal situation. I had no control over it. It was very, very fast. And in a Christian situation, a lot of churches will say a Christian cannot contemplate suicide. And I didn't contemplate anything. It was just this really very, very fast spiral. And the Lord had a friend of mine who I called, who was available. She was an ex-police officer from the UK. And so she was actually able to help me through that situation. But I just said to the Lord, I just don't want to I never ever want to go through that again. I was terrified of what something might have happened if she wasn't there. And so I was just so thankful, and I said, Lord, please make a way. And so that was in the September. In October, I had to take my mum to hospital, and she ended up dying 2 weeks later. My youngest daughter was getting married and leaving home. And so that was another thing that was happening in my life as well. And that's normal, and that's, I wanted her to get married and everything like that. But it then was, I was going to be left on my own. And I had never been on my own in my entire life. I'd never lived by myself. I was 55 and had never lived by myself. And I then had to have a full-time job to be able to support myself as well. And so there was all of those new experiences that were happening at the same time. And from that, being able to have that full-time job, it then enabled me to go into being able to pay for some coaching.
So you hired a coach.
I actually did the coaching training.
Okay. That's the Ziegler
That was the first,
certified.
yes, that was
Oh,
the first one that I did. And so you're then around different people.
mhm.
And before I actually got into that, though, after that suicidal situation, I remember that I actually had some Ziegler tapes, CDs. I actually had 3 volumes of them, and every day for 6 months, I had those CDs going. And you've got that positive reinforcement, positive way of stories of how people have changed their lives. And I had that going every single day. So before I actually even got into the training, that's what I had. And so that then started to change my mindset. And I could actually feel that there was some hope. All these other people have changed their lives against great adversity. And so there is some hope for me. And so that's what what I started with. And then I got into the training. And so you then looking at every area of your life. And when you have something like trauma, it affects every single area of your life.
For sure. You
Um,
cannot disregard it. You cannot just, go past it and just move on with your life. We have to face the trauma, fix it, forgive the person and forgive ourselves before we can move on, right?
that's right. Yeah. Yes. And it's not enough to just look at one area of the life and grow in that area and leave all the others behind, because that just doesn't work. You end up just being in the same situation. And also having to then, once you have grown, is understanding how you got there. And that's a real painful journey as well, because you have to actually look at, well, why did that actually happen? Why was I like that? And I'm not saying that every situation is the same. Everyone's unique and every situation is unique. But in my situation, that's what I had to do. And I could trace it back to where it all started for me.
Wow.
And because otherwise, how would I go forward? What
Mm.
would prevent me from, coming across that situation again and falling into something like that again? I had to know.
Yeah.
To know.
And you had this clarity of what went wrong, how it happened. So you put yourself back and traced, because I think if we don't do that, then there will be no forgiveness or healing. If we just go forward and you say, yeah, let's forget the past, I don't actually believe that it works like that, because we have to go back and peel the layers, because what happened when we experience trauma is we accumulate all these negative emotions within us, and
Mhm.
when we do that, then we dim our light.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
couldn't move forward, like, you know we couldn't move forward to who we really are, and be the person that God created us to be. So
And
we
a lot
will
of, yes, a lot
hide.
of a lot of people with trauma keep it on the inside, and it affects the body. We have great pain. We have
Yeah.
so many medical complications because it's still on the inside. And there's a book called The Body Keeps the Score, which
Oh,
goes to that quite in
body
depth.
keeps the school.
Yeah, The Body Keeps the Score.
School
Um,
as yeah.
it keeps the score. So it's about the body actually. It's actually imprinted in the cells.
Oh
The
yeah.
trauma is actually imprinted into our cells. And, God has made our body in a way that it can heal because our cells are renewed continually.
Renew. Yeah.
But unless we deal with the trauma that's on the inside, then it just replicates. The new cells are going to still have that trauma.
Yeah, that's why we don't have to just disregard it, right?
Yeah,
Sometimes we're just, I'll be fine, I'm okay. And we do that. I know, we do that to ourselves. I'm guilty until I really realize that I couldn't. I must not do it to myself. Then yeah, so Anna is saying like this is very helpful topic. It's good to know that we have to go back to the source of the trauma in order to deal with it. Yeah, so true. Yeah, because if we
yeah,
don't, it will keep it will be with us, within
mhm,
ourselves, as you've mentioned.
yeah.
Wow, this is really good, Robin. Okay, so go ahead.
And it's often thought, and we're learning all the time with the neuroscience, the field of neuroscience, was that people could not heal from PTSD or complex PTSD. But with all the new advances in neuroscience, the brain is able to actually heal. We are able to make new pathways in the brain. The brain is plastic. So you've
Mm,
probably heard of that term, neuroplasticity. And because it's my belief and understanding from my own experience that because the brain has that neuroplasticity, we can heal,
we can help.
from this. And in Christian situations, particularly in fundamental type churches, they will say that like depression is a sin, that
Mm,
that growth and the affirmations and all of those things are new age, and so you should stay away from things like that. But I don't think that's God's intention. God says to transform, that we can transform our mind, that we can renew our minds, and that the gratitude journal, which is so prevalent in what they would say is new age, actually started with God. God said, "Be thankful,
mm,
give thanks in everything." We can say we can wake up every day, and this is part of the healing journey.
mm.
Excuse me, is that is we actually start every day with gratitude, and we are thanking God. Thank you, God, for the gift of this new day, for the gift of the life that He has given us. Thank you, Lord, for the the rest. If we haven't been able to sleep at night, we've had rest. Thank you, Lord, for the sleep. Thank you for the rest. Thank you for the mattress that I have to sleep on. Thank you for the perfect air that you've given us to breathe. The nitrogen and the oxygen are in perfect, proportions for us to breathe. And go through every single little thing that you can think of, and it starts to change the brain.
Yeah,
Because we start to have some more hope. And that's what we need. We need hope to be able to face today, hope to face tomorrow. And I found that I had hope for eternity as a Christian, but I
yeah,
had no hope for today or tomorrow. And so starting with that thankfulness and thanking God for every little thing, it starts to shift the brain. The people that we associate with, the people that we allow into our lives is really critical as well. So and that can also even be through television, if the things that we are allowing into what we see, into what we hear, are negative, whether that's,
mhm,
the people that we associate with in our day-to-day life, whether it's a podcast or whether it's TV, that's negative. We need to surround ourselves with positive people. And that was why listening to Zig Ziglar CDs for me was so life-changing, because they were positive, and I was, having those having those positive stories all the time. So there are lots available on YouTube. There's Darren Hardy is another one. Listening to audiobooks, like The Compound Effect, or some of the Ziegler audiobooks. There is so many different ones that we can listen to. John Maxwell,
mhm. Yeah,
um, our
every
mentor.
day. Yeah,
Yes, all of those things, if we can associate ourselves in that different sphere, that's going to change our life as well and start to change our brain. And then there is what we would say is affirmations. I don't really like that word because it's associated with New
mhm.
Age, but
Yeah,
we can say, I am strong because the Lord is the one who gives us the strength.
Strength.
So, I am compassionate because, or I'm empathetic because I have the mind of Christ.
Right.
All things like this, and we need to put scripture into that. Greater is he that lives in me than he that is in the world.
That's why we need to memorize Bible verses, right? For our affirmations as Christians, because
Yes.
yeah, you're right. There are affirmations there for non-Christians, but our affirmations as Christians are all in the Bible. We
Yeah.
just use the scriptures. There are 6,000 promises in the Bible.
Yes.
So yeah, go ahead.
And
I
make
love
them
it.
personal. Make them personal. I am strong and courageous because the Lord is with me. He will never leave me nor forsake me.
Amen.
He loved me before the foundation of the world. And when we're in a situation where we don't like ourselves, where we actually hate ourselves and despise ourselves, which is what I felt, that because the person who was supposed to love me on this earth didn't, how could God love me? And that verse in the Bible about, that God says we are worth more than the two sparrows. I actually didn't believe that for a very long, long time. And so I used scripture, to continually say to me, before the foundation of the world, the Lord loved me. He
That's in
wrote
Genesis.
he wrote my name in his book. He decided my hair color. He decided how tall I was going to be, and everything that he did. And the story of Amy Carmichael, how she always wanted to have blue eyes like the rest of her family, but the Lord gave her brown eyes. And she would say, Lord, change my eye color, change my eye color. But he sent her, he sent her overseas to a country where people had brown eyes.
Wow.
So it's, that's why he made her like that. God made me short for a reason. He made everything about me perfectly and unique. And I had to keep saying that, and I still say it to myself, because we need to keep reminding ourselves that God never makes a mistake. He never makes a mistake.
Before we were born, he already knew. He already knew us, right?
And there are consequences for the decisions that we make.
Of course.
I got into the situations that I were in. I made those choices. I didn't know any different. I didn't know any better. But the Lord was still there.
There is no plan B for your life, Robyn.
And
There's only plan A.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
it's what it is now.
Yeah. He saved us. If it were not for the Lord, we would be dead. I have no doubts about that, either by murder or suicide. I have no doubts that we wouldn't be here today. And so the Lord, it's only because of the Lord and what he has done that we are here, that you and I are having this conversation, and I can say in the last 6 months to 12 months, the Lord has healed my broken heart. He has put it all together, and only he could do that. And, only he could heal me of PTSD. I had to still do things. I'd prayed for years that he would heal me, but I had to do things. It reminds me of the story of the Israelites when they were going to cross the Jordan River, and the Lord said they had to step into the water.
Yeah.
They actually had to do something.
They were afraid. They were like, no, we're going to die.
Yeah, because at that point of the season, that river was raging. All the snow had melted. And so the river was at full capacity. And the Lord said to them, step into the water. And, if you're coming up to that water, if we imagined ourselves in that situation, coming up to the water, they would hear that raging water. But in the previous days, the Lord had been saying to Joshua, and that would have had this ringing in their ears, be strong and of good courage. I am with you. Do not be dismayed. I am with you.
Yes.
And they were saying the same thing to Joshua. So they were walking in the promises of God, and they stepped into that river, and then the Lord held back the water so that everyone could cross the Jordan River. And so we still have to do things. God will direct us and work with us, but we still have to take that first step.
But we have to wait for him to tell us, right? Like,
Yeah.
wait for him. That has been the struggle, I think, for many years in my life. Like, I thought I'll just do things my way. And that burned me out. Like, I didn't know all of this stuff. Right now, just like you, like, I think the journey started 2 years ago, the healing journey and the growth journey, until God told me, um, you have to rest in my arms, Jeanith. You can't do it all by yourself. Only if you rest in my arms and trust in me, then you will be free.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did, just like how, because I was afraid too, if I'm not gonna do it my way, what's gonna happen to my future? You know, what's gonna happen to all my dreams and my aspirations, all about me. And, like, hey, I made you. You have to trust me. And that was the message. And I'm like, oh, 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 yeah. So
And
yeah.
I think we have, we think that God doesn't know what He's doing,
Yeah.
and I never expected to be in the situation I am in now. I wanted to be married with a Christian family. And I'm so thankful that all my girls walk with the Lord, despite the hypocrisy and everything they saw growing up, that they walk with the Lord. They are married to lovely Christian men, and they are bringing up my grandchildren in the nurture of the Lord. And I'm so thankful for that. But, we were in the ministry. My husband was actually preaching. Nobody knew.
Oh, that there
No,
was abuse.
no, nobody knew.
Wow.
And then when they did find out, that's why people had a hard time believing it, because nobody knew. We would just look like the perfect,
Couple.
family. Yeah. And so, when it all came out and he was removed from our home, our whole life fell apart. And I was no longer a Christian wife, and when it's just everything just disappeared. And I expected at this time in my life that I'd be being doing things with my grandchildren, that I wouldn't have to work, that I'd be married, and that I would be able to do RI in the schools and all of these different things, and ministry things. And life just doesn't look anything like that. But I had to reframe it. I work in a Christian school. I get to impact children's lives every single day, and I'm allowed to talk to them about the Lord. And I get to pray for them, and it's a different sort of ministry to what I envisaged. But the Lord still knows what He's doing.
So indeed, all of these things is all because of God's mercy.
Yeah.
God will use people to help us go through trauma or whatever it is that we are suffering, but it is still Him who makes the way. It is still Him who helps us grow. People
Mm.
can plant seeds in our hearts, but it is God who has the power to make the seeds grow. It is only Him who has the power to heal us, but we have to listen to Him. And He is using people. And right now, God is using you, Robyn. And thank you so much for sharing your story to us.
Oh, thank you. I'm privileged to have the opportunity to do that, and I hope it helps somebody. I hope that the
Oh,
Lord
you
uses.
are already. You are already. So, what are what can you say about, women who are still in that relationship right now? They're still going through this situation and they cannot recognize, or they're confused, or they're questioning, like, what am I gonna do? Somebody's a like, it's not right anymore. How are they gonna navigate through it?
In America, there is Patrick Weaver Ministries. He has a wealth of information, and he also has support. So the most important thing is actually to find someone who can actually support you, and that's crucial, because often we have no money,
Mm.
we have children, we have nowhere to go, and there's all of those things, and that's why a lot of women don't actually leave, and that they have no choice but to stay. They To protect the children, sometimes
Mm.
they stay because it's going to be worse if the children have to have access going back to the husband. And I had to fight for that with my first husband for a very long time. And you don't know what's going to happen when they go back there. So it's a really hard situation to be in. So finding somebody that you can talk to and somebody who can support you, if you know that you are in an abuse situation, you need to get out for your safety and for the children, but it comes with so many complications. So
Yeah.
finding someone who can really help is crucial. Um, I don't know what the situation is in America, but in Australia, we've already had 17 women killed so far this year. It's one every,
17 women killed from the abuse?
yeah. So one every 5 days is the statistic in Australia that a woman is killed from her current or previous intimate partner. So that's the statistic here in Australia. And we need to educate young women as well so that they don't actually get into this situation in the first place. So that they recognise, because so often we just brush it aside. They might go, oh, he doesn't treat me really well, but it's okay. And
Yeah, sometimes it's so hard to see the red flags, and sometimes we just, let it go.
yeah,
It's so yeah, we are also stubborn.
I think because we lack our
Support, education,
identity,
awareness.
identity, yeah, and who we actually are.
Oh
We
yeah.
don't, we don't, society is always saying, you don't look like this. You're too thin, too short, too tall. You're not pretty enough. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. And we always have this continual thing coming onto
All the
us.
lies, all the
Yes,
lies,
that's
right?
right.
And that is actually coming from the enemy, all these
Yeah,
lies. Like,
yeah,
so it is, yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to reflect right now. If you are a mother and you're listening to this and you have a daughter or a son, it is
mm,
vital to raise them well and impart to them their importance, their values, and really build a relationship with your children and talk to them. And yeah, I think this is very important in building a community
yeah,
that's just loving and away from abuse, because it could be that you're raising an abuser or you're raising the victim,
yeah.
and it's heartbreaking, and we don't want that for our children,
Mm.
right?
Yeah, and so many children here. We have a really high suicide rate in Australia as well. So 12 to 17-year-olds, we have really high suicide rate. in children. And a lot of that's from bullying. And that, again, is people saying things. There's in Proverbs, it tells us that that life and death is in the power of the tongue. And that would be our words that we listen from other people, that we're told from other people, as well as what we tell ourselves. So we have to really know our identity, which obviously starts in the Lord, because He made us and He created us. And maybe that's why we do have such a high suicide rate, because so many people don't know the Lord. And so they have nothing to hang on to. They don't have anything to base their identity on.
And no hope. When
Yeah.
when you don't have Jesus, you don't have hope. Because
Yeah.
it's just like being alive and just die after that. There is
Yeah.
no life after death. And if it's just like that, then there is no hope. Yeah. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And what about those victims who are on their journey of healing at the moment? What can you say?
So once you have once you're out of that situation, you'll know you're not a victim, you're a survivor, and you're an overcomer, because you have survived. The Lord has preserved your life. So
Amen.
you are a survivor. And that's the very first thing that we can do, is change our mindset. Is that instead of saying I'm a victim of domestic abuse, I'm a survivor. And even that will change how we view ourselves. Once we're on that healing journey, we might need someone to walk through it with us and help put our life back together. And that's, being able to have a personal coach can be really helpful to do that. But you may be able to do that by yourself if you can look at every area of your life and just say, okay, I need to start again. I need to build my identity. Who am I? When all of these other things are taken away, I'm no longer a nurse. I'm no longer a teacher. I'm no longer a mum. I'm no longer a daughter. I'm no longer anything. Who am
Are
I?
you?
Yes,
It's
who
so
am I?
good. I
And
am
so
a daughter of the one true King, and
that's right. Yeah,
and that's all that matters.
yeah. And having that real deep personal relationship with God is foundational. And because of the spiritual abuse, I could not actually physically read my Bible for a long time. There was passages because he had twisted the scriptures and used them
Wow.
against me, and that's very, very common in abuse situations in the church. So I could not read whole chapters of the Bible. But what I did find, and I thank the Lord for one of my girls actually telling me about it, is the Bible recap. It's on New Version. So it's an app, and I can actually put that on every day. We read the Bible in a year, and I can actually listen to that, and I can actually picture in my mind what the scriptures are saying. I don't have to physically read it. I can read my Bible now, but I had to understand a lot more things. So another series that's really helpful is called Untwisting the Scriptures by Rebecca Davis.
Untwisting the scripture.
Untwisting the
It's a
Scriptures.
book.
It's a book. They're available on Kindle. There's actually 5 of them, and she addresses a lot of these things. Patrick Weaver Ministries is really helpful to reframe, and even just following him on Facebook, he puts up a lot of these things on Facebook. He talks about them as well. So being able to understand what God's heart is for women, and in churches that are that enable abuse, there isn't that heart for women. It's just not there. And so being able to find a church that actually accepts us can be hard. I had to actually leave my youngest daughter and I, we actually had to leave the state that we were in and move to where we are now. She's gone back, but because she's married now. But we had to totally get out of that situation. We just could not heal. And it was the hardest thing I ever had to do, was to leave my girls. And but the Lord has used that. But when we came here, we would go to churches and they would say, "Where's your husband?" And they wouldn't accept.
Oh.
They would not accept us
Oh.
as women. And there would be people who would argue with me about why he wasn't there, and it was wrong that I should not be with him.
Mm.
And so it's trying to find a church, and we found a wonderful church that just accepted us, and they are so loving and have been part of our healing journey. So being able to find that right church situation is crucial as well, because then you have the support of people who actually love you and accept you for who you are.
Because we can't do it all by ourselves. We'll
It's
get
really,
crazy. We'll get crazy. We need people in our lives,
yeah,
the right people. And we can
yeah,
actually pray for that. We can ask God for that.
yeah, yeah.
All right. Anything else?
Um, so putting the scripture, changing our mindset, how we actually, the people that we hang around with. As we grow, we can expect that old friends who are not growing will
Mm,
actually just distance themselves from us. We might have to distance ourselves from family for a time so
mm,
that we can also heal. Uh,
yeah.
because sometimes it's
They
in
don't.
the it's in like the circles that you're in is people who are narcissistic as well. So have to be
Mm,
really careful about who we have around us, what we allow into our minds, and just take that healing journey. Just start taking those one steps after each other, because the
amen.
Lord can use it, and He can do. Nothing is impossible for God.
Amen. So healing is a journey. And yeah, so I'm actually just putting the puzzle together. Um Jesus Christ died for us so we can live forever, right? So it is through his wounds that we are healed. It's actually like a deep statement, like how, right? But when we believe, because it's hard to believe, when we start believing in the truth, that is where all these growth and healing begins.
Mm.
If we just focused on not living by flesh, because if we live by flesh, there'll be a lot of dis- distractions, a lot of temptations. Because being in the flesh, all the lust and the greed and all that stuff,
Mhm.
it's not helping. It's just like a distraction from the enemy. But when we focus on living by the Spirit, and when we do that, our values will also change. We no longer prioritize earthly things, but the things that are heavenly. I know it's kind of deep, but I know you get me.
Yeah.
I know you get me. And only if you believe, because it all starts with believing that Jesus is Lord, that he was raised from the dead and he was resurrected, and now we have the salvation. And when we have the salvation, that's when we actually have the freedom. And that freedom also, or that healing is included in that freedom. I actually thought freedom is all about freedom of time, freedom of spending here and there. And I realized no, it's all earthly things. And if you focus on that, still your life will not have meaning. I mean, this is all good, having all the goods in the world, but that's not just it. Because what really matters is like, after this life, where are you going when you can't bring anything that you accumulated in this planet? Where are you going? So yeah, I mean, that's just my thoughts. And
Mhm.
thank you so much for sharing, Robin. This is so good. I love this conversation. I love this content. I know a lot of women are suffering and then they're just being silent because maybe they don't want to share it because people will judge them. People will, just like what happened to you. Even your family will not accept you for whatever your decisions about your relationships. But they didn't know, or even if they know, they still want you to stay in a relationship that's already killing you. And so thank you. Thank you for just being vulnerable and stepping up your game. And yeah, how can we support you? How can we, or where can we find you? And yeah, tell us all about that.
Well, at the moment, I've just got my personal profile that people can find me on. But in the next day, 24 hours, I will have up my Courageous Leaders Institute page so that people
Wow,
can. So
congratulations.
it's just a process because I've been away. So I'm just trying to get everything sorted now that I'm back. So that will be up and available soon too. Courageous Leaders Institute.
Okay, that'll be and we can find that on Facebook.
Yes,
Courageous, I'm gonna type it. Courageous Leaders
Institute, and it'll also be on LinkedIn as well.
Institute in Facebook and in LinkedIn. See, Courageous Leaders. Like, right? Like, is it the right spelling? Okay. Yeah, and then Facebook. Can we follow you in Facebook as well? Yeah,
Yes,
tell
at
us
the moment,
about
I tried to change it last night. It's just under Robyn Anne at the moment because Facebook wouldn't let
Robin.
me. Yeah, Facebook wouldn't let me change my profile name. So it's just got Robyn Anne at the moment.
Okay. And yeah, last thoughts for our viewers and for those who will be um to those who will be viewing this content, later or will have this on replay. What can you advise for them? What is your advice for them?
The verse that's going to go with Courageous Leaders Institute is Joshua 1:9. Be
Joshua
strong.
1:9. I have to write it,
Yeah,
girl. Joshua 1:9.
yeah. Be strong and of good courage. Be not dismayed, um, for I am with you. I
Amen.
think I've left out one little part, but that's the basic context of it.
Oh wow, I love it. Yeah, I need to memorize that too. Yeah, so thank you so much for your time, Robin. Thank you so much for those who are here. Yeah, just supporting us and taking in this content. I hope we have given you a lot of value today. Don't forget to follow Robin Ann on Facebook, and she will soon also be launching her Facebook page, which is Courageous Leaders Institute. She is a coach, and if you need a coach, I know not a lot of people are taking advantage to have a life coach actually, but if you do, it is life changing. If you actually want to level up your game and be the person that you are designed to be, or be the best version of yourself, you can't do it all by yourself.
Mm.
Need
And
some.
if anyone has any questions, if they are in an abusive situation or they've come out of an abusive situation and they have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. And whether you're in America or Australia or somewhere else, I'll do whatever I can to, give you the information that might be helpful.
Amazing. Thank you, Robin. That's so kind of you. Yeah, I'm just so grateful. I'm just so grateful for your life, for your story, and for everything that you do to help other people. And
I'm
yeah,
so thankful for you too, and I'm so glad that we got to meet through our John Maxwell
amen.
leadership team as well. So, it's always wonderful to meet a new friend who we can just really connect with. And there's so many of us in that group, isn't there?
Yes, I totally agree. Yeah, I'm so blessed. I'm so blessed to have you,
And
and
me
looking
too.
forward to have you forever. Yeah.
So thank you so much for having me here, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
Of course, you are welcome, and my pleasure. God bless you, and yeah, you guys. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. And until next time, we love you,
Thank
Robin.
you.
I'll see you at the
Bye.
backstage. Okay.
Yep.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.